whole to order, or is it just a finance meeting?
Of the whole.
Of the whole, there we go.
Mhm.
Ms. Jasinski, call the roll, please.
Mr. Grippo,
Here.
Ms. Ham,
Here.
Ms. Harrigan,
Here.
Mr. Martelli, Mr. Perugini,
Here.
Ms. Rosenberg,
Here.
Mr. White.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Okay. All rise for the pledge. Jeff, I'm assuming you had a flag ready to go. Almost. There it is. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just like old times.
It's been a while.
Yeah. Well, for not too much longer, I guess. Okay. So according to, all right, let's see. Dr. Solon, is there any audience comment before we begin?
No, sir.
Okay. Then according to the slides we got, I'll hand the presentation over to Mr. Massiana.
Thank you, Mr. Grippo, and good evening, everyone. I will just try and make sure I get my screen here. Okay, you should see my screen in present mode. And with that, I will jump in. So this is obviously the first of about 2 workshop meetings presenting the 22-23 superintendent's recommended budget. The agenda for this evening is first to cover an overview of the budget, where we'll talk about the process, some assumptions, revenue, and an account summary, and then also review salaries for employees, both certified and non-certified, and then employee benefits, which I do anticipate the employee benefits will take some time because of the size of the budget request. So I'm going to go through. I'll pause after each section. I do have 2 screens open, so hopefully I could see, see people as they raise their hands. And I'm just having a little trouble. Do you see the presentation in full screen?
I see everybody.
I see you in PowerPoint.
Yeah, I see.
You do. Okay, hold on. Let me just try this one more time.
And while Vincent brings that up, I just want to remind the board that there's a couple of budget workshops, a lot of slides. If as we go through these couple meetings, we can always ask for more detail, more information at a 3rd meeting. So if there's any further details you want to see for the next workshop, or we plan a 3rd one, certainly bring in to Adam and finance team, and they can work with Vincent and Jeff to get that detail ready for us.
Absolutely, and we'll be tracking questions as we go along. So if there's something we can't answer tonight, we'll answer it at the following meeting. And as you can see now on the agenda, our next session is scheduled for a week from today, the 25th. And at that session, we'll go through instructional expense, which includes a presentation on special education services from Robin Ann Carey, who's our Director of Pupil Personnel. We'll also cover support services, maintenance, and operations. I'll highlight the capital budget during that portion of the presentation next Thursday. And then hopefully we'll be able to conclude. If we can't conclude on the 25th, we do have additional sessions scheduled for the budget. So starting with the budget process, the actual work to develop the budget, which is very comprehensive, began in September of 2021. Feels like a year ago, although it's not quite a year ago, but it was certainly last be taken through this. So, I'll kind of take this section a little bit slower. So when we prepare this budget, salaries are coming from payroll. We are not taking our salary line and increasing it by 3%. It's a detailed person by person roll up from our payroll system. And then medical benefits are based on preliminary projected renewals. The one thing that I like to mention is that we started preparing this budget in September. The information that we have went through November as we prepared this budget. So some of the estimates that we have in this budget, including not only medical benefits, but insurance for property casualty, and some other line items like our pension estimates are based on early projections, and those do change over the course of the budget presentations, either with the Board of Ed or the Town Council before some of those numbers are finalized. The next step beyond the two that I mentioned, the administrators and managers who have budget responsibilities, they input their non-salary line item requests. Separately, all administrators and managers provide new program and new staffing requests, although they're not input into the budget. And all of that information is reviewed as a package, it's discussed, and it's adjusted to meet the district goals and the fiscal realities by Dr. Solon, our superintendent. And that's consistent with what he explained when he made his presentation last week, which was on January 13th. So the Board of Education's detailed review begins tonight, and we'll go at least one more night after this evening. The board's responsibility is to approve a budget, and that's due to the town manager by February 15th. And the town council, by charter, has to approve the town's budget by April 30th of 22. If the town council makes any adjustments to the board's recommended budget, they do so at just the top line level. Those reductions or additions to the budget would come back to the Board of Education, who would have to make the line item adjustments to the final approved appropriation for the budget. So our budget process really wraps up in May. So this is a long process looking at from September through May. Everything that's in this budget is looked at and it's guided by, education and the importance of education. So it's really filtered, not only against complex thinking and social emotional learning, which are the district's primary goals, but everything that we do revolves around prioritizing the need for education first, and obviously working to maintain fiscal efficiency, within our budget is always a priority. As far as the key budget assumptions, Dr. Solon covered some of this, but not all of it. So the first point is that the projected enrollment increase of 5 students to 4,150 is built into the budget. And you could see that our pre-K through 6th grade enrollment, that increases by 73 students. 7th and 8th grade at the middle school decreases by 4, so it's pretty flat. And the high school decreases by about 82 students. So even though our enrollment only went up 5 students, because it's concentrated in the K through 6th grades, we had to add 3.5 elementary teachers. 3 were for classroom teachers. The 0.5 is a music teacher. But if you look at it, the class size goes from about 18.7 students per class to 18.9. Again, Dr. Solon presented a lot of this information last week. We also added a half-time birth to 3 teacher because of increased needs for that program. But there is a revenue offset for that position addition, which is reflected in our revenue budget. The big news for this year's budget request is that we do need to fund up our medical benefits account. We're requesting $2.24 million, which represents more than half of the $4.11 million budget increase requested for 22-23. We'll get into a lot more detail on this line during the bulk of the presentation soon. And the reason that our contributions and our budget requests have to increase is because we need to fund our expected claim rate, again, which we'll go through detail. Our reserve fund decreased from last year from 2.4 million down to 1.05 million, which is the latest numbers we received through December 31st. And the reason we saw that drop is it's twofold. It's because the budgeted contributions in this year intentionally were budgeted below our expected claims. So we budgeted 816,000. We knew claims would come in at 900,000, and I'll explain that in more detail later. But also, our actual year-to-date claims are 1.1 million per month versus $900,000 expected. So there's those two things going on. We need to budget up because we are not funding contributions to the claim rate that's expected, and then the actual claims are coming in higher than the claim rate that was expected. Special education costs, they're just moderately higher due to student growth. This fiscal year, we're well above 30 additional special education students, which is, the highest number of student growth that I've seen, since I've been presenting this budget, and it looks like the latest numbers will take us even higher than 30 additional special education students. So the result of that is we added those instructional assistants in 21-22. So those positions are carried in 2022-23 in our budget. And in addition, there's a request for a transition program coordinator. But tuition outplacement and pupil services, which are generally relatively high budget requests, those are flat, which is good news there. And then there is a modest increase in operations and maintenance, and that's being driven by two things. One is utility costs are expected to increase next year, and also to increase some of the funds in our repair account. Our buildings are aging. That's not new news. So those are the budget assumptions. I'm going to breeze through our mandates quickly. I know the Board of Ed members and the administrators that are on the Google Meet, as well as anyone from the community watching, knows that, there are mandates that as an educational institution in a public school, we're required to execute on these mandates. There's quite a few of them. I just want to spend 30 seconds talking about the newest mandates, which are bolded at the bottom of the screen here. So one item is the implementation of a special education data system that is being required by the state. This is going to be more of an administrative issue for us, and we've already been working on it, led by Robin Ann Carey. That system goes into effect as of July 1, and what the state is doing is making the special education individualized education plan process the same system across all school districts. Right now, systems use different, each district uses a different system. The state is making one system available so that we can, track our student information in that system. There is a potential cost pickup on this because we pay roughly $14,000 per year for the system that we purchased through Frontline. The state will not be charging us. So there is a budgetary pickup, once this system goes live. And again, we're assuming that it's going live July 1. School lunch. On early dismissal days, we've always provided school lunch for the elementary schools. It is now a requirement that on early dismissal days, the middle and high school students have to be provided lunch. So that will affect the food service budget. We do have to bring in staff to cover those lunch preparations. We expect it to be modest. And again, food service, has its own budget, so those costs will be covered through that budget. But did want to mention that because that is new. COVID-19 related, screen and stay, vaccination status tracking, weekly testing for the non-vaccinated. These are more of an administrative load. that we've taken on, not necessarily a cost load. We do not pay for weekly testing for non-vaccinated employees. They pay for them on their own. However, what was just announced in the last week is that there is a requirement to cover the medical cost through our medical benefits plan for 8 at-home test kits per person per month for any employee who participates in our health plan. This is a federal mandate, and so we just received some guidance, from our carrier Cigna on, how this will be implemented. I don't know what the cost of this will be. Again, it's a mandate that came out at the federal level. The information that we received so far is that we will not be reimbursed, or Cigna will not be reimbursed for the cost of those test kits. So we're working through those details. So I saw that there were some questions going across. I'll just pause for a moment to see if there's anything that I need to address. And I saw that Ms. Ham asked if there is a sunset on the testing kit requirement. And I'm just gonna take a second here. There's a gentleman, Thomas Kowalczyk, who is on the Google Meet with us. Tom is a Senior Vice President, USI, who is our benefits consultant. So I'm gonna just turn to Tom, he's in the same room. Tom, are you aware of any sunsetting of that provision? There's no sunsetting that we know of. I think the thing that's worth mentioning that goes along with this is that the U.S. Post Office just announced today that anyone can go to their website, and there's a link that I know I received earlier, which we'll be sharing with our employees, where if you fill out the information, you can receive 4 test kits. They will be delivered by the post office to your home. I don't know when the test kits will actually be delivered, but that link is already available, and I know several people that have already completed the request. So there might be multiple methods for test kits to be received, including the ones that we're responsible to reimburse our employees through Cigna. So any questions verbally that I can answer?
Then there are a couple other questions in the chat. I don't know if
So Vin, I had one. I think Sam's kind of related. Mine is regarding the 3.5 elementary teachers. I know the half a teacher was for music. What would the class sizes look like at the elementary level if this budget did not add 3 students? You had, I think, 19.7 and 18.7.9. And to Sam's question, what's the rationale for 0.7, 0.9? Is that the time 7/10 of the time or 9/10 of the time a student is there, or is just the way you average the class sizes?
Yeah, it's just the math that comes out to the average. So there's no 0.9 student in any one classroom. It's just the way the math works. If we did not increase the teacher headcount, the class size would go to about 19.4 students per class. And so the effect of that, and this is in the budget book, if you look in the enrollment section on the second page, which lays out the elementary class sizes, the effect of that would be that you'll start to see some of the grades at some of the schools will go well above 20. Like right now, Doolittle's 5th grade class has 21, one class of 21 and 3 classes of 22 students. So if we don't add those teachers, you'll start to see some class sizes in the various schools and the various grades, crest that 22, 23, 24 mark. And that is the concern. I mean, the general indication, or the general desire here in Cheshire, is to keep class sizes around 18 students per class on average across the elementary grades. So we're a little bit above that this current year. as well as next year, and that's by adding the 3 teachers. And
Okay.
just to give you the numbers, the elementary student count is 2,190. We budgeted for 116 teachers. So if you took the 2,190 and divided it by 113 teachers instead, that's where you'd come up with the 19.4 students per class. And I don't know if Marlene or Jeff want to add, any further thought to that. Okay. I see Tim White has a raised hand.
Yeah, Tim, go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Adam. Yeah, so if I'm just going off of memory here, I believe that you're quite. Sorry, I've got to pop up. Oh yeah. Going off of memory, I believe the increase in teachers, 3.5 elementary school teachers, was related to an increase of, I don't know, about 72 kids or so, which I understand that. I think that's pretty straightforward. What I'm wondering about is, for me, and even more so for the public, we have a decrease of about 82 students at the high school level. So Dodd was flat, but the high school was going down by 82, but there wasn't a mention of decreasing the high school teachers by 3.5, sort of a commensurate number there. I'm just curious, what's the thought process behind that?
I will let Marlene or Jeff address that.
Sure.
I'm not seeing Jeff, so I will step in. If you recall, when the last contract was negotiated, we went from teachers teaching 6 to teachers teaching 5. So part of
Yep.
that was to get them commensurate, and so that's where it begins to even out.
Okay, so it's kind of baked into the contract by
Mhm.
virtue of you having teachers are teaching fewer classes. So that's kind of the offset. Not all teachers, but some teachers were teaching 6 classes. They're all going down to 5 now. Not
Right.
all of it this year. This is happening over the course of a couple years, correct?
Correct. That's a 3-year phase-in. So this was the first year of that phase-in, and then over the next 2 years, that will continue. And that brought them on par with their high school colleagues.
Okay, so you used to have 4. You could have had 4 teachers teaching 24 classes, and now you have to have 5 teachers teaching 24 classes, basically. And okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Faith, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just going back to Tony and Sam's question, is there, he asked what would happen if we did not fund those 3. Is there, those 3 positions, is there a formula or a ratio for every teacher removed from the request, we increase the class size X amount? So in other words, if instead of 3 we had 2, what would the effect be if we added 1? And I ask that only because I don't want to make you go through it all tonight, but is there some formula that we could use as we're looking at these numbers to make an assessment of the 3, 2, or 1 additions?
I mean, back of a napkin, Faith. So the 2,190 students is the current student count projected for next year. And for the elementary grades, we have 116 teachers, including the 3 classroom teachers. So you then reduce by 1, the math would be 2,190 divided by 115.
Okay.
And that'll give you the average. And then if you look in the enrollment section of the budget book, you'll see that what you would have to do is spread out the difference in the number of students across, each of the schools and each of the grades. So the counts will bump up, by essentially by 19 students at a time, roughly.
Okay, so on page, I'm not even sure what page this is, but it said projected K-6 average class size 22, 23. This factors in the 3 new positions.
Correct.
Okay, all right, then, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sam, you had your hand up. Sarah?
Thanks, Adam.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to kind of go back to the Tim's question about the high school and I typed it in here. I think Jeff might have already. Okay, so the number of students per section taught in a class is variable. So I guess my question is, do we host a class still? Do we run it even though there's 4 kids in class? Like, what's our threshold?
No.
We-
Well, when you see, if you look straight at our spreadsheet
Yeah.
of like every class that we offer and how many kids are in that class, you might see a class with 7 or 8 kids in it. However, that class will be combined with another class, and the teacher is basically teaching 2 different courses in the same period. So when we get into where you'll see that is like multi-level German 4. So some students are assigned different work than others. You'll have 18 kids in the classroom, but it's really a rare bird. It's those sort of, typically you'll find it in like Latin and German, places where we're trying to raise the ceiling so kids can continue to matriculate up in level, but still allow everybody to get access to the courses without hiring additional German and Latin teachers, which frankly, we probably couldn't even do even if we had all the money in the world, because there's just not a lot of availability out there. So it's a great compromise, and our teachers are super about it. They want to offer this so kids have greater access to those languages.
Right. I mean, I get where you're saying, Dr. Solon. I'm concerned about the quality of the class. I'm sure the teachers are doing a great job now that they're trying to differentiate to satisfy those different levels of needs within the language courses and so on. But I just didn't know if we had a built-in, similar to, again, Faith's question, if we had a built-in threshold where we just don't run the class if we don't reach that threshold.
No, and it's really art and science. So you look at the number of students who select different courses across the content area, and then you work the best you can to offer all of those kids that opportunity to take that class. And then it's across not just the course, but across the content area. So all of the science classes, you start with the core requirements and add on the electives, and you're trying to offer them all, but we can never really do that. So we have to be very creative with respect to the staffing versus student enrollment to be able to provide kids what they want access to. So we'll offer, it's a rare bird. So like maybe twice, or if we get 12 kids who want AP environmental science, we'll offer that every 2 years. We won't, because we can't always run it every year with 12. We have to balance it with other electives. So we'll do it that way. We won't offer it every year. And we'll tell kids, well, likely to offer it next year. It's not going to happen this year.
Got it. I just didn't know if, the core classes you do have to satisfy, clearly.
Yeah.
You need them for graduation, but
Sure.
does an elective become a terminal course because it's impacted by the sheer number of interest in students wanting the course, and any other variables that might come into play? Okay, thank you.
Sure.
We good, Mr. Grippo?
I don't see anything else right now, so please continue.
Okay, thank you. So the next section is talk a little bit about state and federal grants. On the screen, what you'll see is the grants that we receive through the state to support education. The largest one being the one at the top, which is the IDEA grant, and that supports students with disabilities. And you could see that the grant, and I'm not going to go through detail on each grant. In the grant and revenue section of the budget book, there is detailed explanations on all these grants. The one that I did want to point out is just a couple. The Smart Start, that $150,000, that covers the teachers and instructional assistants for the 2 Smart Start classes that are held currently at Darcy. Open choice, that's based on the estimated number of students that we'll have in the open choice program next year. And then the one all the way down at the bottom, which is ARP ESSER. That is a one-time grant. All the other grants that you'll see on this list are grants that we receive year in and year out, unless they're changed, which they typically are not. But ARP ESSER is different. It does come in the form of a grant. It also operates differently from an accounting perspective because that is reimbursed for any COVID-related costs. That grant is multi-year, so we can use that $898,778 for the 22-23, as well as a portion of the 23-24 fiscal year. So that's grants. I'm going to go to the next slide. And what it says at the top of this slide is that grants are funded directly by the state to the Board of Ed. Revenue works a little bit differently. Revenue is budgeted by the board and budgeted on the town side, and that's funding that basically offsets the cost of education for the town, but those funds are not received directly by the school district. You could see that the largest one is the educational cost sharing grant. That's 9.3 million. That's about what it's been the last several years. There's been talk in the past about changing the formula for how ECS is provided district by district, but right now we believe that is a safe number. The other item that I wanted to mention is the third one down, which is the Birth to 3 program grant. That's 400,000. We did increase that to offset the cost of the Birth to 3 teachers. So if you're looking at the budget, we've got the cost of the 0.5 Birth to 3 teacher added, and we're budgeting on the revenue side, it's about $50,000 additional revenue expected through that program. So the combined total of grant revenue of $2+ million plus this revenue that goes to the town of $10.4 million. If we look at that from the point of view of the taxpayer, the grants and the revenue essentially reduce the burden on the average taxpayer in Cheshire who has a home and 2 cars assessed at $231,104 of about $1,000. So that's the benefit financially of the grants to the taxpayers. But obviously, there's benefits that the school system receives, through the grant program in particular. And so that's really all I wanted to touch on with grants and revenue at this point in time.
Hey, Vin, I just had a quick question.
Sure.
For our grants, are these all 100% grants? Do we have to match anything for those?
No, these come directly. So there's no match required.
Okay. So
And
that,
there's no, it's not a competitive type grant where we have to apply and get approved. This is a grant that, other than ARP ESSER, is provided every year. We do have to provide an update to the state on what the purpose or what the intended use of the funds will be, and then provide periodic updates throughout the school year. But it is not a reimbursement or matching type grant.
so that 0.5 position, that's a 100% reimburse for the Birth to 3.
Yes, it's billed through Medicaid. So some of these grants get a little bit tricky, but yes, we expect that to be fully reimbursed because the need for the Birth to 3 programming is pretty strong. In fact, they've turned away some needy children because they just don't have the staff to accommodate the number of requests. And this is a unique program. I think Dr. Solon was explaining that we may be the only school district in Connecticut that's offering the program.
Thank you.
And inherent in that is incredible value, in the sense that we are able to engage students in our community with the greatest need right from that birth to 3 level and support those families, which makes for a much smoother transition into the school experience and ultimately greater outcomes. Early intervention is critical to improved outcomes. So, it is a tremendous logistical burden. It is difficult to navigate the state billing process and all that business. But for us, the ends justify the means in terms of what it does for those kids and families.
Okay, I will move along until I'm told otherwise, or I see somebody raise their hand. And so I do want to acknowledge that Mr. White did ask in our Dr. Solon's budget presentation to obtain information about the educational cost sharing formula. And I'm not going to answer the question on the formula because we're still trying to get through the details. It is kind of a convoluted formula to even find information on. But this slide speaks to the importance of the amount of educational cost sharing we get here in Cheshire. So up at the top of these bars, you'll see that Cheshire is highlighted in this red bar, and our per pupil expenditure is $18,156 per student. Dr. Solon covered this. The average, the per pupil expenditure across the state is around $20,000. This just shows the DIRG B districts that are similar socioeconomically to Cheshire. And you can see it ranges from South Windsor's $16,668 spent per pupil up to Greenwich's $24,000. However, if you look at the green bar that's embedded in the lower portion of the blue bar, what that is it's showing you the total dollars of educational cost sharing grants. So Cheshire, along with South Windsor and Granby, received the largest educational cost sharing grants. So if we put this information together, our per pupil expenditure is $18,000, but if you look at it net of educational cost sharing, our per pupil cost to the taxpayer is about $15,866. So on the previous slide where Cheshire ranked 5th lowest, if you consider the educational cost sharing grant, we are the 3rd lowest in DIRG B. So that educational cost sharing grant, is important to us. Again, it's, over $9 million of revenue that flows in. The thing that is kind of interesting, if you look at other towns that are similar to us, Madison, as an example, Madison receives, Madison is all the way over to the right. Their per pupil expenditure is $22,980. You could see that they receive almost no educational cost sharing grant. It's less than $1 million. Similarly, over to the left, Farmington and Avon receive very little educational cost sharing dollars. It's my understanding it's because the ECS formula is grounded in the wealth of the community, and because the prisoner population is counted in that wealth formula, it makes Cheshire look less wealthy. So, Jeff, I don't know if there was anything else you wanted to share about the ECS formula at this point. I know we did some research on it and we still have some more work to do to actually find the formula. There's a lot of information, but it doesn't give you the statistics and the numbers to calculate it easily, correct?
Well, I was just trying to pull up additional information here because the information I pulled up in statute, there are 49 definitions of the different variables within the I don't want to even call it an equation because I don't even know that it's an equation yet, but is really kind of buried. Even when you look on the state website, it's almost impossible to find. So yeah, I think it's premature to say we know it. I'd be shocked if there was almost anybody in the state who knew it, because I looked it up last year. I had raised the concern about those incarcerated individuals in town not being part of our population count, the census count. And I was sent back an infographic on how ECS was calculated, showing that it didn't include incarcerated individuals in the population already. You'd be all right. I found that email. I went to click on the link and it's been removed from that website. So it's impossible seemingly to get information, but we're going to continue to try and get that detail.
Jeff, if I can add on, there actually was at one point in time a formula published on SDE website and in detail. I can't find it either, and links I have from 4 years ago are broken. So
Right.
I'm wondering what's going on.
Yeah.
Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. So just a side note on this, I wonder if we could, I believe at Thursday's meeting, we may have some of the legislators coming. They might be able to get a quick answer. If we could ping them on the ECS, particularly in relation to maintaining funding this year and into future years, because this is a big deal for us. So if we have any of the legislators coming to Thursday's meeting, that might be useful for the public to understand that too.
That's where I got some of this information from Liz last year, but it's not, the links aren't active anymore. I'll double check.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, even if you could just highlight it for them like tomorrow morning. If they do come to the meeting on Thursday, to not catch them off guard, and maybe they could actually have some information for us if they poke the right people, to give a little bit of comfort as we move into the budget here, because there's some potentially big impacts on ECS and counting head count in Cheshire and stuff.
Sam had a comment in the comments. Sam, did you want to bring that up again? Or?
I just, sorry, I just wanted to kind of go back to Class A because it was in my head. I know we have the comparative to how much we spend per pupil, but I just wanted to kind of get a sense what the average class size is. I know off the top of my head, since I do work down in the Fairfield County area, that Greenwich has about 15 kids on average in their class, and they do spend more money than us. So I'm not sure, Vin, if you have anything.
Yeah. So that was in, if you click on the link on our budget presentation from last Thursday, I have the high school student teacher ratio. That's on slide 17. I know we started pulling, and I can get you the elementary by building ratios. Certainly. So, I mean, just to give you a context for high schools, our DIRG B rank is 14th out of 21, most students per teacher, but it's, it's in the realm of the group. I mean, the lowest is 12.29 and the highest is 17, and we're at 15.15. So that gives you a sense at the high school level. But like I said, I can get you the elementary rankings and where we fall.
Okay. And then just going back to the ECS funding, I don't think, Vin, because I did speak to Liz a while back that the fact that the incarcerated population isn't counted doesn't impact ECS funding. It just impacts voting, from my understanding, because they redistrict the voting.
Yeah, that's what we were told. Um, you know, it'd be reassuring to see the actual equation anywhere with my own eyes to know more definitively. But I guess right now we're taking everybody's word for it.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
we're still on the quest to get an answer that I guess that we're really comfortable and confident in. Okay, good to go. Getting into some of the meat and potatoes. Okay, so this is the budget request for 22-23 is the $81,114,420. It's a $4.1 million request, or a 5.34% increase. As far as where our budget dollars go, you could see that salaries are about 62% of our total budget. Benefits are another 18%. So combined salaries and benefits is about 80.7% for 22-23. And then you could see, just based on the pie chart, the next largest slice, which is substantially smaller, is the $7 million for support services, which includes transportation. It's roughly half of that $7 million. Instructional expense, which includes portions of special education, tuition outplacement and pupil consulting services. That's about $4.5 million, or 6% of the budget. And 5% of our budget is for our maintenance and operation lines, which includes utilities. If we look at the budget from the point of view is what are the contractual, mandated, or facility related costs we have, those account for 95% of our budget. So, looking at this chart from the top, salaries is 62%. If you then add the 14.9 million for benefits, that takes you to 80%. Adding transportation takes us to 85%, and so on. So 95% of our budget, I put in quotes, are fixed costs because they're either contractual, mandated, or have to do with just keeping the lights on and keeping the buildings in good repair and running utilities. If we then look at, well, what's the other 5%? The other 5% are categories such as instructional supplies and textbooks, computer capital equipment, new and replacement equipment, training. And so that's about $3.9 million. I know that the board members, that have been here know that what we do to manage our budget is that we put a cap as the year begins on how much expenditures our administrators and managers can spend from their non-payroll accounts. And so this 3.9 million really is where we're able to control and manage our budget. And as we get through the course of the fiscal year, right now we're at 50%. I do anticipate after we get January's numbers, we'll raise that to about 60% of expenditures permitted. So because the board has no ability to exceed its appropriated budget, this is a key way that we manage our budget. And these are the line items that are typically affected if we had to put the brakes on budgetary spending. And I see that there are a couple, at least one hand has been raised.
Faith,
I
go
think
ahead.
that's me. I just, Vin, if you could go back to that
This
fixed
one?
cost, as I recall, oh, I've got to put my hand down. If I recall, we were at 93% of the budget last year, so 7% for variable. Does that sound about?
No, it was about the same last year. It was about the 95.5. It's been roughly the same the last several years, Faith.
All right. Okay. But I will say this year, what I said last year, I just find it a little dismaying that where we are charged to, or our charge is to instruct and educate our children. And now granted, obviously that comes through the teachers as well, but we're very limited when we can only rely on 5% of the budget to cover all of the tangible necessities that go into instructing a child. And I look at these fixed costs and would love, even if we could just take 1% off of any one of them and give that into the variable instructional costs, especially, would be a lovely, probably unrealistic world in which we live, but.
Not totally. From this perspective. So if we look at the transportation line, which is about $4 million, and you'll see it actually in our budget request, to the extent we can do things like consolidate routes, and find savings through our contract, there is some give and take in the transportation line. So even though I'm calling these fixed, that doesn't mean there isn't some wiggle room as we go through the course of the year. But there's no doubt when you look at it from this perspective, it's somewhat surprising that, 5% of our budget are for those non-payroll expenditures that we need, primarily to support education. Some of the costs in there are things like legal fees and expenses related to the board. But it does give you a kind of a good perspective on the components of the budget, looking at it this way.
Okay, thanks.
Sam, you had your hand raised.
Vin, is there a contingency account here or line? I'm just trying to figure out if.
No.
Oh, okay. Those other services or anything, are those part of a contingency account?
Yeah, so we don't have a contingency account. As I was explaining, the way, we make sure that we meet our budget is by, controlling the percentage of expenditure on these line items as we go through the course of the year. So we're generally at 50% through December. We used to be a little higher, but since the pandemic, we've tightened the clamps a little bit. And usually by the time we get, to March, April, if things are going well, we'll raise that to 80%. And then the last 20%, May, June, when we know that, the risk of any surprise expenses that are extensive go away. In the past, special education costs, those were typically the drivers of us having to reduce spending in other categories. So, as to make it short, the contingency is controlling the expenditures in these categories for the most part.
And then you pretty much encumber the accounts quarterly, or?
We encumber exactly as we're going along. So the encumbrances right now are limited to 50% on items like textbooks or lines like textbooks and instructional supply.
You pretty much keep a daily eye on it, and then if necessary, put a halt to spending.
Yeah, I mean, our budget, I guess there's a couple of different ways to explain it. First of all encumbrances, and there's about 3,000 a year, do go through, an electronic approval process, that includes the administrators. I see all 3,000. Dr. Solon sees those that are above 5,000. So it's pretty hands-on process. We do a monthly budget review, with the, with our central office administrators, and looking at where we are with each of the accounts. So there is a process, and obviously each of the department managers and the administrators at each school, they're held accountable to their percentage of the budget. So we're on top of it.
Thanks, man.
Tim, go ahead.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, so Vin, I'm gonna challenge your words the same as I did last year, which is simply, I don't consider these necessarily to be fixed costs. The rates are fixed, what we pay each teacher, but as a board, we can increase or decrease the number of staff and teachers. So I mean, that's on the board from my perspective. So I'm thinking trying to make life, a little easier for everyone, and also possibly saving money if there is anything. Have you thought about? Have you done anything, or just thought about changing over phones? I'm thinking we probably have landlines throughout the school system, and just at some point getting over to cell phones, even if it was just a reimbursement to people on sort of a monthly basis or anything like that.
Well, I mean, our phone system, we're all on IP-based phones. We really don't have copper lines the way that we used to.
Okay.
And
So you might have the hardware, but there's no cost there really.
well, there's a call. I mean, we do pay, Windstream to provide the data lines, but it's certainly less money than we were paying when we were on copper lines. And then just in general, I know that on the telecommunication side, we do go after and obtain E-rate reimbursement. Our reimbursement rate is 40% against eligible costs. So some of the phone expenses E-rated. The internet service that we get through the Connecticut Education Network, which used to be free, but now, we are paying about $18,000 a year. That receives an E-rate discount as well. So we really try and do everything that, we can to, take advantage of not only cost savings, but the E-rate program, which is excellent for schools and libraries. But we only worry about the school side right now.
Sure. Okay. And then I think my last question, one of your lines in here was for cleaning, maybe on the next page or something, I forget.
Well,
Or
cleaning is
the
under the
prior page.
facilities expense.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just curious, post-COVID, is there a savings there? If all of a sudden we get an all clear, in May and say, all right, nothing to worry about anymore because the whole thing went away, do we save any money in the cleaning budget next year?
Well, no, because we're the intraday clean. I think what you're referring to is right now we're doing intraday cleaning, which is over and above the contract. So we have day porters in all our schools whenever we're open and students are in, cleaning the schools. When we stop that, it won't save any funding off the contract costs because that's over and above what we've contracted for. Now, the cleaning contract runs out at the end of this budget year that we're working on, 22, 23. So we'll be going out to bid for the contract after that. But I don't anticipate that contract changing much unless we change the
Okay.
scope of cleaning, which that has other ramifications.
So I'm not really following this here. I mean, I think I understood what you said, but I'm still thinking, in my mind, there's a cost related to COVID, like intraday cleaning.
Yes.
Or is there no cost associated with
Oh, no.
those?
It's about $25,000 per month that we're incurring right now. So when COVID ends, we stop incurring that. Now, the way we paid for that is through the ESSER funding.
Okay.
Okay.
So that disappears. Got it. Okay. So there's give and take. It might be a wash. It may not be. It may just be a wash. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But well, for one thing, the ESSER money we got, and that's not going back, correct?
Going back to
the federal government or the state government or anything like that?
no.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
we'll use that. I mean, whether it's for health and safety reasons or for learning loss. Yeah, we really, I know there's a lot of talk about a lot of the funds have not been expended. About 20% of the ESSER funds, from what I read recently, has been expended across the country. We did not receive all that much ESSER funds, so We will use every penny of it.
Oh, is this the one where Meriden got 36 million and we got about
Yeah.
$3,600?
Yeah.
No, maybe $1 million or something. It didn't really make much sense how it was divvied up, but okay, at least from my perspective looking at Cheshire. Okay.
Okay.
But still, the sooner we get the cleaning done, the sooner the pandemic's gone, the better, and then we could focus more on catching up with learning and stuff. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, and I appreciate it.
You're welcome. I think no more questions. Okay, we'll get through these next few slides kind of quickly and then really move into the salaries and benefits. So this is what this slide is intended to show you is of the $4.1 million budget increase, where that's going. So 30% of that increase goes to salaries, which includes the additional staff that we talked about. 55%, 2.2 million, is going towards benefits and medical benefits primarily, although there are some other offsets. About 180,000 goes to maintenance and operations, support services 161,000, instructional expense 47,000. So as Dr. Solon explained last week, in order to try and submit a responsible budget, we've really tried to hold the line on maintenance, support services, and instructional expense. And as we go through next week's presentation, we'll talk in more detail about those three lines. They didn't increase much, but we're also not decreasing them. They're basically going to be flat. And because we do have some ARP-ESSER funding, I think we'll be able to manage to provide, the best possible education that we can, without needing to increase those lines very much. So pretty much those have been held flat. So with that, I'm going to jump into salaries, starting with certified salaries. And this is just to give the board a sense. This yellow highlighted column that's in the chart shows what the contractually agreed upon raises are for each of the groups. So the secretaries, they're in the last year of the contract. So what you'll see built into the budget is 2.75% for that group. Instructional assistants, we're actually negotiating their new contract that takes effect July 1st. Starting next month, we'll be negotiating. So for the purposes of this 22-23 budget, I use the same salary increase assumption as we had for the current fiscal year. Facilities also is in the last year of their contract. They're 2.75% this year. The teachers, they're at 2.56%. That includes general wage increase plus step. So that's the all-in percentage. And the administrative personnel, they're at 2.5%. They're in the second of 3 years of their contract. So, wages are built into the payroll assumptions, which are built into the budget. If we look at the certified salaries group, you'll see up here at the top of the chart, there are about 413.4 full-time equivalent certified employees in the district. And you'll see that the lion's share of the $39.8 million for this budget category is for teachers, followed by about 2.7 million for administrators, directors and supervisors, 1.8. And you see also included in this category are the cost of substitutes, student activities, which primarily is used to pay coaching and extracurricular stipends. Tutoring costs are also included as part of certified salaries, as is adult education. This is a chart, starting at account 110, which is administration, down to 118. This is actually taken right out of the budget book. And I'm going to just highlight a few of the increases here. First of all, and the biggest category being the teachers, which is seeing an increase of $1,077,000. That's 3.19% increase. As I just said, the teacher wages are going up by contract by about a little over 2.5%. The reason this is 3.19% is because it includes the additional teachers that are being budgeted or that are in this budget request. So principals and assistants, that's 3.71. Again, their slated bargaining unit contracted wage increase is about 2.75, but we do have additional staffing included in there related to the pandemic and learning loss, which can be offset by the ARP ESSER grant. And substitutes, homebound, adult ed, those we've held flat. And student activities is going up 1.23% because that's the general wage increase portion of the teacher contract. So that is, at a high level, are the certified salaries. And I see there's a raised hand.
Sam, go ahead.
Hi, Vince, sorry. I don't know if I missed this, but did we talk about projected retirements attrition?
We did not, and we have not included that in the budget at this stage.
Okay.
As we progress through the budget cycle, in particular, when we get to the town council in March and April, where we have a better sense of retirements, is where we can incorporate that information. But as of right now, it's pretty early in the process. So, but that's a great question. We do not, at this stage in the budget, anticipate retirements, and we're not accounting for it. On average, when we aren't offering an incentive, we'll see about 8 to 10 retirements per year. Last year was a little bit higher. No, I'm sorry, last year was 8 retirements. The prior year, where we did offer an incentive, we had a total of 15 teachers. So that's the range.
Thank you. I guess my worry on that too is, we have a national teacher shortage. And so I'm concerned, hopefully not, that teachers will be leaving also at the end of the year. Just kind of consider that going forward. But thank you. I just didn't know if I missed the retirement conversation from when Dr. Solon presented.
Okay.
Faith, go ahead.
Can you explain the administration increase of 7.37 versus the other categories, which are considerably lower?
Yes, I can. So administration is 3 individuals. It's Dr. Solon, it's Ms. Solano, and it's myself. And so the 21-22 budget is actually lower than actual, because I'm sure you remember Dr. Solon received a salary increase. And so the difference between the budget 21-22 and recommended is 7.3%. But the reality is the 21-22 expenditure is going to be higher than the 581. He did receive a very aggressive raise, deservedly so, but that's the explanation for that line.
Thank you.
Okay. And then this is a page that's in each of the budget sections in the budget book, which I will review as we complete each section. So what this shows is the percentage of certified salaries versus the total budget. And you could see over time, if you look back in 03, 04, and 04, 05, about 54% of the budget was certified salaries. Based on this year's budget request, it's about 49.2%. It's not that salary line is going down. It's as a percentage of the budget, it's lower than it used to be because other sections of the budget on a percentage basis are higher than they used to be. And that's going to be primarily non-certified staff and benefits are going to be higher. So that rounds out certified salaries. I'll move to non-certified, and obviously we can come back if there are questions. So similar to the certified salaries, I'm showing the same information. We have 362.7 full-time equivalent non-certified staff, and you could see the largest categories in blue: instructional assistants, about 3.3 million, secretary and clerical, 2.2 million, maintenance employees is about 1.8 million. Support personnel includes a variety of different positions: media technicians, occupational therapists that we have on staff, technology support staff. The nurses line is about 568,000. Then we have our Board of Ed bus drivers, as opposed to DATCO's drivers. Our Board of Ed does employ bus drivers and provides vehicles, which is a cost savings had we had outsourced that to DATCO. And it also gives us a great deal of flexibility. And then about 3% of the line is for our managers and supervisors. Following the same pattern, and you could see that overall the non-certified salary line is going up 2.54%. Again, it's important to explain that in non-certified staff, unlike certified, the budget includes things like not only salary increases, additional staff, overtime, which is generally modest across all our accounts, additional hours for employees who are not entitled to overtime, longevity pay, shoe allowance for our maintenance staff. That's all included as part of this line item. Couple of items that I'll point out on the right, which is the increased percentage. The managers, supervisors, that 3.77% is a little bit high because we have the one manager resource we share with the town, who's a project manager. We didn't account for his salary increase for last year, so I included that in this year's budget. And then all the way down at the bottom, that 8.79% for health services. The reason that's increasing so high is because we did have to increase the hours for our nurses, and we're anticipating that to continue into next year. We're seeing, not only because of COVID, but also because of additional student enrollment, some of our nurses' offices are really busy, so we had to bring someone in for additional hours at Highland School and at the high school. So that's what that increase represents. And down at the bottom in the purple color, you could see, those percentages, which I had already talked about, what we built in for raises. So that's our non-certified salaries. As one additional piece of information that I do share about this. What this analysis shows is, since 15-16, what's the annual growth rate for each of the non-certified categories? So if you look at that chart on the far right, that shows annual growth rate. Instructional assistants, that growth rate has been 7.3%. That correlates directly to the increase in not only the number of students that are identified for special education services, but the intensity of need for a lot of our students has increased. So the reason that growth rate is 7.3% is because we've added staff. Same thing for Board of Ed drivers. We've had to increase Board of Ed drivers, primarily to accommodate some programming that we're doing for our transition students that are doing various type of work study programs. And then the last one I'll mention is the manager supervisors. That's a 3.9% annual growth rate, simply because we added that shared resource, who's a project manager that helps us with our capital budget facilities items. That's why it's 3.9%. And you can see the growth rate below that, on an annual basis is pretty modest. And generally, in line with salaries. Where you see some really low, like maintenance and support, that's due because, over time we have decreased some staff. And so that rounds out non-certified salaries. As I was saying, as a percentage of the budget, because of the staff increases, we've seen that the percentage of budget that is allocated to non-certified salaries has been increasing since 2012-13. So I'll pause there before we start the benefits section, which is the highlight of this evening, I think. Seems to be no questions, Mr. Grippo.
I don't see anything in the chat or hands raised. Oh, wait. Faith,
Okay.
go
Hey,
ahead.
just as I look at that health services, are our nurses, general med, or do some of them have, a certification in mental health?
Well, no, those are all registered nurses. The mental health providers, and this is a question that I will turn over to Dr. Solon and Ms. Solano, but we do have mental health providers, but the school nurses are there just to provide, medical services, to our students.
Right, yeah,
Okay,
they're not,
before you guys leap in, my thinking is that there is pressure to address some of the mental health issues in the district. And I was thinking, if we were to have nurses with expertise, perhaps certification, in mental health care, that might help us as well. Just a thought.
Okay.
would you want me to respond to that, or just throwing it out?
It's up to you if you want to. It's just
Yeah, I
an
think it's
observation.
something we would evaluate. I want to be careful about, that crossing into medical care versus school-based support, with a mental health nurse. But it's something, certainly we could discuss with Nancy Stanton, our nursing coordinator for the district.
Thanks.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, I think there are no other questions. So employee benefits, this will take us, through the remainder of the evening. So the total request is 14.9 million. And you could see that the largest share is for medical dental at $11.8 million. Our pension plan is about 9% of the total in this category. It's going up 90,000. Social Security, workers' comp, and unemployment, life and disability. So that rounds out the employee benefit lines. If we look at this just again, as we did in the other areas, so medical benefits, that top line is a $2.2 million, 23% line item increase. We'll get to that. Life insurance, those are life insurance that we provide as an employee benefit. Those rates are generally very stable, as is disability insurance. The pension retirement, that is an early estimate. We are still awaiting information from the actuaries. So that budget number may change. I just don't know yet. The two items that I did want to highlight here, we are seeing a $72,000, 19% reduction in workers' comp. The reason for that is effective July 1st of 21, we moved our workers' comp coverage from KERMA to travelers at a significant savings for equal coverage. And so even though you see that reduction of 72,000, we saved a little bit more than that this year. We're still anticipating a good savings for the 22-23 budget year. And then unemployment compensation, we brought that budget down by 20,000. We are not seeing the level of unemployment claims today that we were seeing during the first year of the pandemic. So that reduction of 20,000 will get us back to pre-pandemic levels, which I think is very safe. And Social Security, that's just a modest increase based on salary. So Employee benefits obviously is the largest line item budget request because of medical benefits. And we'll cover that in more detail as we progress through this portion of the presentation. I did want to, I'll go as quickly as I can, but just to give a high-level overview, the insurance plans that we offer our employees are all self-insured. We moved them from Anthem to Cigna July 1 of 2019. And, that move, I think, has been helpful, certainly from the administrative perspective, as well as some of the wellness dollars and offerings that Cigna has provided. The plans that we offer didn't change when we moved from Anthem to Cigna. We have the high deductible HSA, and it has prescription coverage integrated in the HSA. We have an HMO plan. We have a PPO plan. Those are all also managed by Cigna. And we, this past July, moved the Pharmacy Benefit Administration, which used to be with another third-party provider. We moved that to Cigna for a couple of reasons. One is because Cigna did charge lower administrative fees. And number two, so that we have all our health coverage, including prescription, under the Cigna umbrella, which gives us some more negotiating power, but it also is administratively easier for our employees to have all our plans have prescription coverage under Cigna. We do offer an Elements Choice plan that meets adequate and affordable coverage requirements. Not a lot of employees participate, but we do have to offer it in accordance with the Affordable Care Act. And we do provide dental plan as well. So when we talk about medical benefits, it includes medical as well as dental. And then employees do share in the cost of that, which you'll see in a few minutes. And they have co-pays and deductibles, and the Board of Ed is required to make certain contributions. And I see that there is at least one hand raised.
Andrew?
Thank you, Adam. Vin, what does each teacher contribute, or for those that participate in the HSA program, what do they contribute?
Okay, so actually,
What does the district contribute? That's my question.
if you hold that question for 2 slides, I'm going to get to it.
All right, I figured you would. I'm just interested.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right, and so the really what I want to highlight here is we have undertaken many initiatives over the year to try and manage our healthcare costs. That first bullet is over time, and this addresses your question, Mr. Martelli, our employees do pay towards their coverage. And you could see that for 22-23, employees will pay 1.8 million through payroll deduction towards their medical benefit plans. The 1.8 million is 13% of the total, and that total is about $14 million. So when we budget, our budget is about 11.8 million. We budget net of those expected employee contributions. With respect to what each group pays as a percentage, that's on the next slide. But to answer your question, the teachers are at 16%, and the other groups are a little bit below that, but I'll show you that on the next slide. Okay, in addition to working with their employees to pay higher co-share rates, higher HSA deductibles, higher co-pays, we've also worked to consolidate, and we've completed the consolidation. We had a lot more plans that had different variables. We really consolidated that down to a literal handful of plans, which saves us on an administrative burden point of view. The teachers have the highest deductibles under the HSA plan, 2,250 individual, 4,500 for 2-person and family coverage, and all the rest of our bargaining unit employees, they're on a 2,000, 4,000 high deductible HSA plan. Any employee who elects the PPO or HMO, they pay the full cost to buy up to those plans. And over time, we've asked and reiterated to our employees that the best plan for them from a cost point of view is that high deductible combination with the HSA. And over the years, we have reduced the number of employees in the PPO or HMO, but it's not zero. So any employees who elect those two plans, it's cost neutral to the board. It doesn't matter. Okay. And that was all done through collective bargaining over, many years. In line with that, the new administrator contract that was went into effect last July actually eliminates the PPO and HMO options as of July 1 of 22. So our administrators is the first group to only offer the high deductible HSA plan. And so this particular chart, that shaded area in the center, the green highlighted area, this shows what the co-share rate is by bargaining unit. So for example, the secretaries, they'll be at 12% next year. The instructional assistants will be at 22%. They do have the highest co-share rate, and the co-share is what portion of the cost of the plan the employees pay to buy that coverage. Facilities is at 12%. The teachers are at 16% this year. They go to 17% for this budget, 22-23. And the Cheshire administrative personnel go to 13% in this budget year. So the co-share rates, do go up by year for each of the employee groups. I know that the board, I shared this presentation with the board members. I neglected to mention that this presentation is also posted on the website. So if there's any detail that we need to go through, we can, but I'm going to move along. So our HSA plan enrollment, we did hit a new high this January of 76% of employees. This is just a look back. On the left is where we were, back in 2010-11. Most of our employees were in the PPO or in the HMO. And now just looking at 21-22, 76% of our employees are in the HSA, with about 100 total employees still in the PPO and HMO. And we do, even though it's cost neutral to the board, we do remind those employees every year during open enrollment that the high deductible deal for them financially. This shows the HSA percentage on the right in the green portion of this chart by bargaining unit. The reason that the instructional assistants are at 53.6% is because of the structure, of the plan and the cost. It really is not as competitive as either the PPO or HMO for Medicare. They never paid in. And so under Connecticut state law, they need to remain in our health plans. Now, they do pay the full cost, which is $700 to $800 per month to stay in our plans. Teachers retirement, TRB, contributes either $100 or $200 depending on, the employee status. But that's why you see in 2010-11, we had 75 retirees in our plans, and it's down to 52 because as those employees age and pass away, that number will continue to decrease. But that does have an impact on our plan because those employees are typically older, and older employees have, a larger share of healthcare costs. But those have to remain as members of our plans. Okay, just a few more things that I wanted to highlight in terms of the things we do to try and manage our healthcare costs as low as we possibly can on the things that we can control. So the HMO plan did go from fully insured to self-insured in 2015. We did see quite a bit of cost savings by not paying the fully insured rates, which we had been paying with Anthem. So that was the last of the plans to go self-insured. We moved our stop loss coverage to CT Prime in 2016. That also has had a very cost-effective savings for us. All our plans combined with the town moved to Cigna in July of 2019. That doesn't save us claim dollars, but our administrative fees were cut by about a third. And on top of that, the prescription rebates we received, more than doubled. So that was a, financially worthwhile move. We also offer wellness programs. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this other than to say the wellness programs that are mentioned here, there's a health coach that's in the town and schools 3 days a week. The person is a nurse who specializes in health and wellness. That's paid by Cigna. We don't pay for that. Omada has a pre-diabetic and a pre-hypertension program. Livongo is a program that's dedicated to people who do have active diabetes. WellBeats is a video-based training program. Those costs are paid for. Is that we moved, as I mentioned earlier, prescription coverage from PBI RX over to Cigna effective this past July, and that does save us some administrative dollar costs. So that is at a high level is the things that we do proactively to try and manage our healthcare costs. And so the question that I'm always trying to answer is, well, is it working? And this starts to speak to, our effectiveness. Up on the screen, you could see that, and it might be a little bit hard to read, but there's a publication which I did share with the board members by email. This is from the PwC Health Research Institute. And what it's showing is the medical cost trend. This is the chart that you see in that pinkish color is from 2007 through 2022. And then the chart up on the left here showing the US medical cost trend from 2008-9 through 2021, the average growth per year of medical costs across the country is 7.1%. And so I'm going to take that information and just compare it in a couple of different ways. So this chart that just flowed in where it says actual, 6,525,337. Those were our gross claims back in 2007, 2008. If our claims trend followed the national averages in 2021, that would indicate that our gross claims would have risen to 15,946,091, and they did not. If you look at our actual gross claims, which is the second section that flowed in, our gross claims growth has been 5.2%. So we're lower than the national average in terms of trend. And then the third section of this chart, what that shows is what are our gross claims after we take out and account for the stop loss rebates that we receive, the prescription rebates that we receive, and any interest that we receive on our medical benefits reserve fund. And so that growth rate has been about 4.6%. So I think I can use this to say that we are doing better than the national average. A lot of it has to do with the management initiatives that we have in place. And the other important point that I want to make here is that over on the right, if you could see those red arrows and green arrows, claims don't flow year over year increasing. They ebb and flow more than they increase. So you could see in 8-9, claims increased by about 3.5%. Then they increased 0.8%. Then they actually dropped by 3%. And then we hit the spike, which happens every few years, certainly, and we're going through one, currently. 15.7%, followed by a drop, then a spike, and then a drop. So claims are not predictable because for the most part, what drives those changes in claims is people getting sick and having higher cost claims. And when I say higher cost, I'm saying any one claim that's over $25,000. So that's a picture to put a little bit of perspective around where do we stand versus some of the national averages. And I don't know if there was a hand up there, maybe I just, yes.
Go ahead, Tim.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, so thank you for this, Vin. I appreciate it. It's interesting. What I'm wondering about
that Price Waterhouse is showing that at least year over year that there's going to be cost declines. It looked like from 7 to 6.5 or 7 to 6%, something like that. But our costs looked like a hockey stick, and they are going straight up. And so it'd be interesting to see, at least I think it was a comparison of slides you have coming up or something. And so I'd be interested to kind of get some detail as to the differences as to why the national average is trending down and we are trending way up.
Yeah. I mean, the national average, the rate of increase is decreasing, but it's not decreasing year to year. Yeah. And I mean,
Sorry, yes, that's what I meant. Yes.
Generally speaking, when you take a gigantic view of the United States and these medical plans, I think it tends to even out the variances from one plan to another plan, right? So we're a relatively small group. So we've experienced it. We get these crazy spikes and then they tend to subside. So I think the national averages tend to bury some of that, but I'm going to just move on to the next slide, which is kind of related. I'm taking the information from the middle two columns, and then I'm looking at it to give you a sense of, on the far right, what this is showing is our ending reserve balance fund each of those years. And so while we can't control claims, the one thing that we can control is how much we contribute towards claims and the balance that we have in our reserve. I know that's not a bold revelation to anybody that's on this Google Meet. And so the importance of claims comes into play to protect yourself. So when we say a 2-month reserve is a healthy reserve, what that protects you is to roughly a 16.7% claims increase. It's 2/12, 16.7%. If you have 3 months of reserves, you can cover a 25% spike. And if you have 4-month reserve, you can cover about a 33% spike. And so on the far right is year over year, how many claim months we have covered. And the reason that the claim months increase, you could see 2010, 11, we went 5.6, we hit a high of 5.6 claim months. Our reserve was 3.1 million, when our average claims were 5.6 of that. And then you could see that dropped to 4.2 months, 3.4 months, and then ultimately dropped as low as 0.9 months of claims reserve. What happened to us is, as we saw that reserve balance increase, we started using that reserve balance to reduce the contributions we needed to make against our expected claims. And so we started eating into those claim months, and then we had a bad claim year there in 13-14 where claims jumped up by 10% and it really pulled down what was available. And so we started increasing our contributions, and the reserve fund started to grow, and the number of claim months grew from 1.2 to 3.4 to 4.4. We hit another high of 5.6 claim months in 17-18. And then we started to use those reserves to not fund the contributions at the rate of expected claims. And so that balance started to come down, and then bang, we had another tough claim year. The reason I highlighted those in red on that far right column is because it's almost an identical number of claim months, 5.6, 4.2, 3.4. We went down to 0.9. That was in 10, 11 through 13, 14. And then we kind of repeated that pattern, 5, 6, down to exactly 0.9 again. So some of this, certainly is self-imposed in that when we know that there's a strong reserve balance, we tap into it. And this is a problem that we've struggled with since, certainly since I've been here as the business manager. We're struggling with it again because we had a large spike in claims. There is a cycle to this. As Dr. Solon mentioned in his presentation last week, we are, working with Sean Kimball, and we'll work with the board and the town council to come up with a strategy where we don't suffer these. We'll always have a claim spike, but we won't suffer the same way if we fund our run rate of claims every year. So there are different ways to deal with it. And I see there are questions and hands raised.
Tony,
That was
you're up.
and this is great. I love seeing this. The only thing I have a problem with is it doesn't matter what's in the reserve. Ben, I know we keep going back to that because the claims experience back in 2009 through 14 was not 1.1 or 1.2 million dollars a month. I think it was in the 700,000.
Yeah.
We budgeted or forecasted for what, $800,000 this year or $900,000?
Well, the forecast was 900,000, but we budgeted 816.
So we under budgeted purposely to draw from the reserve account, right? We not necessarily funded where it matched the claims coming in. And on top of that, we're seeing 1.1, 1.2 million dollars. So it doesn't matter what's in the reserve necessarily at the end of the day. It's why those claim costs increasing the way we've been seeing an increase, especially over the last 3 years in a row, where it's 8.6 up to 7.8%. It's a massive increase. So I don't know if we're going to get into that later, but I'm curious exactly what's going on there.
Yeah, I do have, a couple of updates, to what's happening. But you're right, Tony. The spikes are inevitable. This is the highest spike we've seen, But you could see in this history, in 11, 12, it was a 15% jump. It subsided the next year, but then it jumped 10.8%. If you look at it as I was trying to depict, and you could see, it's 4.6% overall, but it's not evenly 4.6%. And so I think that's the difficulty is you can't predict the spikes, but how do you deal with the spikes more effectively so we don't wind up in the situation we're in?
Yeah, no, it's honestly, if it was easy, Vincent, everybody would have figured it out, right? It's not that simple, but to the best and to the extent possible, we owe Cheshire community an explanation on why costs are increasing. And I don't know if it's the costs increasing, if it's more people in our plans. I don't think our headcount has grown that dramatically to drive the extra 200,000 to 300,000. So we owe an explanation of what the increase is being driven by in this trend over the last 3 years. If we're going to get any support for adding $2.2 million to our reserve fund, because it's going to become a money pit, right? If we can't get an idea. So again, it's not easy. I understand it. I just need some factual explanation I could take the folks help understand why we're seeing this and what we're trying to do to mitigate it, beyond what you showed a couple slides earlier. So that's all. But this is very helpful. Thank you for putting this together.
This is I'll go through this quickly, but the way we fund our medical account and the way we fund the reserve is just important so that everybody's on the same page. So the money that we allocate in our budget goes into the reserve fund, and then claims are paid out of that reserve fund. So there is a flow that goes in and out. The contributions clearly is something we can control. Claims, as Tom will cover, there is an expected level of claims, but you can't control what the claim dollars are year to year. And we've seen, as we've just talked, these spikes that really throw us for a loop, especially if we don't have enough reserve to cover it. Healthy reserve covers 2 to 3 months of claims. We were as high as 5. We are below 2 again. So that's how the medical benefits reserve fits into the operating budget. This is just, one way to illustrate pre-2015, claims were exceeding contributions. So claims are the red line, contributions are the green line. We hit a low reserve balance of 749,000, but at the same time, we started increasing the contributions. And by the time we got into 2016, contributions exceeded claims, and so our reserve balance started growing. That ended in 2017. This chart picks up 2017, where our reserve balance, because contributions were higher than claims, our reserve balance started to grow. We hit this high of a little over 4 million, or 5.6 months of claims in July of 2018. We started using some of those reserves while claims were increasing, and so claims were exceeding contributions, and so our reserve fund balance dropped. Very straightforward, just a different way of illustrating the same point. What I wanted to really focus on in this chart, again, I know this is like beating a dead horse, but this column called net annual change, this is the difference between the contribution and the claim rate year over year. So in 2012, 13, 14, we had more claims than we had contributions. So the reserve fund dropped. Then the next 4 years, we had more contributions than claims because we did increase the budget. And then our reserve balance started to grow. And then starting in 2018, we had the opposite effect. The red circle here, that 821, 120, that's the average contributions we've been making so far this year. Our budget is actually 816,000 a month. We had some adjustments that went into that account, but we consciously discussed during last year's budget cycle, and including with the town council, that we expected claims to be 900,000 for this fiscal year. So our budget was lower than the expected claims. Rather than increase the budget, the decision was made that a $1.5 million contribution will go directly into medical benefits reserve fund. And that did take place as of July 1. The issue we're faced with is because this year, our contribution rate is 816,000 against a 900,000 expected, and we're even exceeding that, unfortunately. But now next year, where we expect claims to be $1 million per month, we need to increase our budget from 816,000 to 1 million per month. And that's why we need such a large increase this year. So part of this year's large increase is because we did not increase the budget coming into this year. This again just shows graphically the ebb and flow of our reserve balance. Currently, that balance sits just above $1 million as of our December claim month. And so this is where I bridge into, how we arrive at our budget. And in just a couple of minutes, I will introduce Tom. So this is, again, is our employee benefits, and I've circled there medical benefits. The recommended budget is 11,816,000. That's an increase of 2.235 million. Well, how do we get to that number? That number is the net of employee contributions. So how we got to that 11,816,000, first we start with claims. We expect claims to be $12 million next year. I will tell you that the information that Tom is going to present, the run rate of claims that he'll present is a little bit lower than that. It's around $11.5 million. I think the $12 million, based on run rate, is probably a better number. The stop loss premium that we'll pay is $1,109,000. We will make $668,000 of contributions to our employees' HSA accounts. We will pay Cigna about $300,000 in administrative fees for all the plans and the work that they do to process claims. Employees who waive insurance, they receive about $76,500 next year. And then included in our medical benefits line is $8,000 of employee assistance and wellness. So the total gross budget is $14,163,479. What we deduct from that to arrive at our budget number is $1.8 million for employee co-share and retiree direct pays. And we're using an assumption that we'll receive about $500,000 in stop loss payments. So that's how we get to that 11,816,000. The way we obtain the information on funding for claims does come from USI. And this picture on the left, which is a little bit hard to read, that's the actual renewal projection that was provided by USI that Tom will be presenting in a lot more detail. So before I go there, I'll just take a quick pause, and then I'll introduce Tom if there are any questions.
Please go ahead.
Hey, then can you go back to the previous slide?
This one?
Yeah, so we're gonna pay, just so I get this right, we're paying 1.1 million for the stop loss premium, and we expect a $500,000, so 50% of that back, or 48%, 48 to 47 back in reimbursements. Am I reading that right?
Yes.
Okay.
But the reason that we pay for the insurance is because that does fluctuate. There's been years that we've gotten more back in reimbursement than premium. So it is an insurance. that
No,
we-
and
Yeah,
I understand. I mean, we're not going to get back. Not going to get back what we paid in. That's not how insurance works. So I understand that. I just wanted to make sure I understood that. And then what is the benefit, or what do we pay to employees when they waive their coverage? What's the bonus?
so it varies by bargaining unit. The largest one being $1,200 for our teachers. However, in the last bargaining unit agreement with the teachers, it's only grandfathered to teachers that were hired prior to the contract that was executed. New teachers, that is no longer available. The waiver payment is no longer available. And the bulk of those waivers are teachers who waive benefits.
Okay. And then so that I know, this is the funding for claims, the 12 million, that is our run rate. That's not, do we factor any other increases in there? I mean, is it what, an inflation factor or anything in that 12? I'm just curious. Are we going to get into that?
Yeah, I'll let Tom speak to that.
Okay.
It's a great question. Good on questions?
Yes. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
All right. So I'm introducing here Tom Kowalczyk, who's been in this meeting the entire time. Tom's the Senior Vice President at USI for Employee Benefits. Tom has been on the Cheshire Public School and the town accounts longer than I've been here, so it was pre-2010. So he has so that we don't get an echo effect. Sure. And I'll keep presenting on the screen. This way you can see.
You're gonna mute.
Can they hear you?
Can you guys hear me?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so Vin's muted. So thank you for having me tonight. And, I'm going to run through this, and definitely feel free to, at any time, ask questions. I'm happy to answer them. Like Vin said, I've been working with the town and board for a long time. So I have if you have any historical questions, I can definitely answer those. And, we'll kind of run through where we are for the 22, 23 budget. So why don't you can keep going. The formula is the same carrier to carrier. The formula is the same any consultant's going to use. I mean, the way you come up with, when you're on a self-funded basis, the projected claims, which are, when we're talking about your budget, claims are 90% of your budget. Your stop loss, your admin fees, anything else is probably about 10% of your budget. For whatever reason, when we looked at December, we did have a higher claim month again in Cheshire, which, again, that could be, remember, you also have to remember with claims, there is probably, Cigna will tell you they're paying right now probably about a month. They'll tell you the lag is only about a month when they pay the claims. But still, if you think about that, things started spiking again, right before Thanksgiving, right after Thanksgiving, people got worried about the new variant and everything. December's claims could have been probably was stuff from September, October, where people, again, were getting more elective type stuff done because they were feeling more comfortable because people were getting vaccinated, hospitals were opening. And then again, unfortunately, things started to spike again. Is there any questions so far? Okay.
Is your volume up?
Yeah.
Okay, as long as you can hear.
Yeah, I can definitely hear. Hopefully I'm not ignoring anybody. So again, this is just the template we put it into. Again, we take the medical claims, the prescription claims, then you total them. Again, you have to adjust them for trend and you have to, and again, it's just the whole calculation. Basically, you come down and you're going to look at this. And again, we're going to get another slide because If you look at this and you look at the total medical RX column, and you're like, wow, Tom must be crazy. He's telling us our claims are going down almost 1%. So I think the next slide, we might be able to demonstrate this a little better. So again, what Vin was alluding to before is that self-funding is self-funding. When we come in, we give you a projection. We know what the fixed costs are going to be for stop loss and admin. We put those in, but we project the claims, and we give you the claims projection every year. And you are no different than any other municipality, is that when you're setting the budgets, again, it based on trust, reserves, whatever you want to call it. You know, there could be that year where I come in and I sit down with Vin in the town. I'm like, hey, the claims are spiking and it's 12%. I provide the information. Then at that point in time is if you know, again, if you have a healthy trust, or, you know, you don't want to budget 12 that year, you know, because you got other concerns. And so you're like, we want to budget 6, you know. So if you know that and you budget 6% that year, you just know that if you run the way that we projected, you're going to eat into your reserve by 6%. And then if you run worse than projected, because some things pop up, you can eat into the reserve even more. So I think, again, what you're seeing in this, on this calculation, if you go on the right-hand side, if over the past 3 or 4 years, we had budgeted exactly what we had projected for claims, we would be looking at almost a flat increase. We would be looking at a 0.8% increase. But if you look at the box down at the bottom, and again, this is me just taking what you're currently budgeting versus what I'm projecting, what we're projecting with the most recent 12 months of claims, that's where this number is, you know, that's, and again, Vin said mine's slightly lower than the 12 million. But again, this is where this is it. If you look at this box down here and you go to the chart that Vin showed previously, when you go through the calculation, both based on the most recent 12 months of claims and everything, the projected cost for your self-funded plan is 11.5, 11.6, you know, in that range. But again, if you project it to what's in your actual budget, that's where the increase is coming from.
And so this particular page is the town board of ed.
Correct. This is right. Oh yeah, I think, yeah, we have just the Board of Ed. Sorry, we do have just
Board of Ed is the next slide.
Yep. Sorry.
This is the town.
Yep.
We'll skip that. This is the Board of Ed.
Right. So here's the one we were talking about. Exactly. This is the Board of Ed where we're saying if over the years we hadn't eaten into the trust, or you know, I don't want to say lower the increase or whatever, but looked at it and said, okay, we're comfortable. Again, Vin explaining, we have 3 months in the trust, 4 months trust, 5 months in the trust. We're comfortable lowering our budget number a little bit. If you hadn't lowered the budget numbers at all, again, we'd be looking at a flat increase. And again, there's nothing wrong with looking at year over year and using the trust. It's no different than any other municipality, Board of Ed. That's what it's there for. That if you build up the reserve, that's what it's there for, is to help offset those years where, again, I don't want to budget at 12, or it's you know, we have a healthy enough reserve that, because you remember when you look at your reserve is being self-funded, really the only thing you have to budget in your reserve is the run out. So that what run out is if you said we're getting rid of our medical plan 7/1, or we're going to go fully insured versus self-funded, there is a run out. So again, as of 7/1, you're like, we want to go fully insured. You would have run out claims with Cigna that you would have to pay. And that is a liability that you have to book. And so that is something the auditors ask for every year. It's called incurred but not reported. So claims that have incurred but haven't been paid yet. Sure.
Tom, I don't know if you're taking questions or not.
Sure. Yeah, no, definitely.
You know, again, the reserve comes up, but
Yep.
Again, if we didn't touch the reserve the last 3 years, there still will not be enough money to have 3-4 months worth of claims, because the claim experience has been much higher for the reasons you showed a few charts back. Some of those high cost claims, retirees, expensive procedures. So I guess looking forward, and you're probably going to talk about that next, right? What you're projecting for claims, next year is, it sounds like to me that we'd have to overfund the medical reserve until this claims experiences comes down a bit, because
Well, this is the number. So this is the number at the bottom there in the box. That is the number that, based on the most recent 12 months, and again, we'll be updating that. But that is based on the rolling 12 months of claims, including all your large claimants. That for your fixed cost, your claims, and everything, you need to be, again, mine's slightly different, 11.5, 11.6 versus the 12 that Vin has, but it's that this is the number that we would be looking at.
So, yeah, just explain, this 11,436,000, that's the combination of medical, prescription, and dental.
And dental, sorry,
That's
correct.
based on a rolling 12 months.
Correct, right.
But it's going to get updated as we go through
Yes.
the next couple of months.
Correct. Right. So we'll be adding December in soon. And then within the first couple weeks of February, we would add through January. So again, I started off talking about the closer we get, we can take out trend and everything too. Unfortunately, we do know December was not a very, very good month. We did look at that, but again, January, obviously we have 2 to 3 weeks, 2 weeks left. So we'll have a better idea about January. That's what's going to really what you have to take a look at. And then it's also taking a look at, and I don't just do that when I look at it. I also look at, yes, you have to go by the act, you have to follow the model and look at it, because listen, it's the most prudent way to project claims. But at that point in time, I also do look at the large claimants too, and look at some on there and say, like, in this report's not in here, but I have a report. I get claims data from Cigna fed into, we have a claims reporting system at USI, and I can actually look at it, and there might be somebody down at $25,000, and somebody might look at that and be like, oh, that's no big deal. That's not, or somebody at $10,000. And we can look at that and I can say, it'll show me in my reporting system and say, no, based on those diagnosis code, that person's probably going to hit 175 before the end of the plan year even. So there are things we take besides actually taking the rolling 12. There are other things we look at.
So Tom, my background, it was also in healthcare. I won't name the insurers, but one of the things that I did there in IT was try to build a predictive analytics model, look at HCPCS codes and other codes,
Sure.
try to predict,
Mhm.
working with chief medical officer, future needs. And I appreciate you doing that. Was the next question. I'm not surprised. So I'm glad to hear that, to the best that you can, you are, looking at those diagnostic codes to see, is that an indicator of what's to come? So I appreciate that. The point I was trying to make earlier is not only would we have not had to have touched the reserve last year, but we have to have dramatically add to it to even match what we're seeing for the claim. So I know these last few years have been a little bit abnormal with the high cost claims.
Yep.
But I appreciate a few slides earlier you detailing what those high cost claims are. I think that answers a lot of the questions. But are you going to talk about, Vin, are you going to talk about what we should plan on budgeting for the $1 million a month, or is that coming up or no? What I was going to ask is, looks like we are going to plan for $1 million a month worth of claims in the budget, or are we still going to kind of a little underneath that?
I mean, again, we were pretty much, yeah. I mean, like the way we usually work things is Ben is I will say he's very good about tracking everything and keeping track of the numbers. And usually he comes to the meetings and him and I we compare things, like, we're tracking things on a monthly basis too. I mean, I meet with the town and board on a quarterly basis, sometimes a monthly basis, but basically at budget time, he, pretty much comes and says, hey, this is where I see us running right now. What we put in, and before I came up with these numbers, to come up with the box on the bottom, I called in and I said, what's your actual line item in the budget this year? Like, what do you have in there? So I can compare it to what I was projecting for the claims and costs. And, again, Vin had already based on your trends and everything came up with the $12 million based on things we're running. And, December definitely ran. I'll be very interested to see January and look at the large claims and also what the claims were in January, because I do believe, because I did see a lot of my other groups spike in December too. And so again, to me, that really could have been a lot of people in September and October going out, again, people are vaccinated, feeling better about things, going to get their surgeries and getting stuff done. So to me, December could have been a combination of some of the large claims, but also a spike of September, October services that were getting paid out in December. Because I have another municipality pretty much about the same size as you that's been running very well, and they almost doubled in December to where they were usually running.
Got it. Tom, thank you so much for answering my questions. I'm good for now. Thanks.
Hi, Tom. This is Adam.
Hi, Adam.
Thanks for coming tonight.
No problem.
We've been sort of waiting for this presentation for a while. So let's see. My first question is: you had mentioned the retirees who were employed before 1987.
Yep.
I think that they're the ones who couldn't have who weren't contributing to Medicare.
Correct.
So by my count, we should not have many of those retirees left. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, 52. I mean, it seems like a high number to me too, but
52?
Yeah, that was in one of Vin's slides. Yeah.
It was 72.
It was 72.
Now
And
that's
it's
52.
and believe it or not, it's just there's a no-win situation either because and I feel bad. Listen, for your budget, it's a strain. But to Vin's point, I also, a lot of these people are on fixed budgets, even if they have pensions and stuff, and they're paying upwards of $800, $900 a month, even with what the TRB gives them. And there's nothing I could even do. Like in some like commercial groups, non-municipal groups, sometimes we'll come up with and if there's some things like that to see if, there's ways to get these people on Medicare and get Medicare supplement plans and stuff, but we can't even do that. We couldn't even go and educate and say, hey, let's get you on the TRB or let's get you. I mean, this is it. This is unfortunately the way the rules and everything are set up is they're on your insurance and they pay, even though you're paying a lot of money and paying $175,000 in a lot of cases, because some of them are hitting stop loss. They are paying $800-900 a month, and whatever the increase is they're going to pay next year too. And so it's terrible. It's not good for the retiree, and it's not good for the boards of ed.
Right. So I guess that leads me into my second question. So it seems like we have this significant exposure because I didn't think the number was that high. And as Vin had mentioned before, the national trend was lower, but our expenses are going through the roof, it seems like, at least in the short term.
Yep.
And so is there a way to help us against this exposure to reduce our risk curve at all? Can we expand our risk pool? I know you had mentioned, we're currently self-insure, and I know that, we had gotten away from full insure. Is there any way to do this except through cash infusion? Is that the only way to help us get us through this period of time? Because it seems like if we have 52 retirees, that's going to be a significant exposure for us going in, probably, let's say the next 5 to 10 years.
Battery
100%. Sorry, my computer died, so I'm over here now. So, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, so a couple things is that in years past, we have looked at different things as a way to mitigate it. But I mean, honestly, if you went to Cigna now and they're not going to give us a separate insurance policy for just the 52 people. I mean, if they did, it would be through the roof because they would know the risk and everything. I mean, in the past, and honestly, we looked at it because in the fully insured plan was in place in the past on the Blue Care at least, and it was mainly more a town thing because when the police retired, that was the plan they had to go to, and at the time it was kind of the same thing. Let's leave it fully insured because these are going to be, retirees. But when you did the actual analysis and everything, compared with even what the claims costs were and everything, versus being fully insured versus self-funded, you still, and I think Ben pointed out on one of the slides, is it was much more advantageous to be self-funded. I mean, I think the best way that I always talk about self-funded in like a 5-year window, and I think that was really nice the way Vin highlighted everything, is that you're gonna have in any 5-year period, you're probably gonna have two bad years and 3 good years, or maybe one stretch you can have 3 bad years and 2 good years. But again, just on an overall way, if we took it and I just moved another municipality about the same size as you from fully insured to self-funded last year, and they kept hemming and hawing for years. We kept updating the presentation for them. We would compare self-funded costs to fully insured costs. And over a 10-year period, we looked at it for them, and they had a couple rough patches, but over a 10-year period, they were $4 million to the good if they had been self-funded versus being fully insured. So again, it's unfortunately, especially municipal budgets, Board of Ed budgets that I know are very sensitive. There has to be a stomach sometimes for the ebbs and flows and ups and downs. And, trust me, we're looking at anywhere we can mitigate risk. And if I could come up with anything or do anything to mitigate the risk on the retirees, trust me, it would be the first thing that I would suggest. But there's those pre-87 retirees are just, there's really no way around it.
Can you add one piece of information? So I know that you represent some towns that are still fully insured.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand the benefit of being fully insured, that if this is your premium for this year,
Mm-hmm.
that's all you have to pay.
Yep.
But what are you seeing in terms of renewals the last couple of years?
Oh, double digits, 12, 15. I mean, listen, right now, out the gate, if I'm telling, like, again, relative to your budget number versus what I'm projecting, if we're saying, 15%, that would easily on a fully insured basis be 20, 22, 25% starting out the gate. Because, there's things built into fully insured. The carrier puts their margin in, their profit, state, believe it or not, even as a municipality, you pay state tax on fully insured. So there's other things that go into fully insured that I would, at a group your size, especially for as long as you've been this way, I know it's a little bit of a rough patch. You would never go back to fully insured. It's just not, this is a much better, self-funded is the way you need to be. It's managing the stop loss and the risk. And I know, like Vin said a few years ago, they looked at it and moved and combined with other municipalities. I know people have heard of the state plan. We look at that all the time. Even you being self-funded, even with your increase in your cost, if you took the state plan's rates and multiplied them times, took all your bodies and multiplied the cost out, your cost for the state would be much higher than it would be, again, being on your own and being self-funded. So, everybody in Connecticut is looking at ways. I mean, I manage a collaborative down on the shoreline that's made up of towns and boards of ed, and they've done well together. But what they were a lot of smaller, fully insured groups that came together to form a larger group that was self-funded. And again, here they're the perfect example for you. If you want to look at them, is that you talk about your reserve, they were down to running in a deficit 2 or 3 years ago, like wondering what they were going to do and everything. Had a budget, a pretty significant increase, all of them. And then the past 3 years now, they've run really well and built up a big reserve. And, again, I've worked with Cheshire long enough that, again, they're looking at everything. I'm like, okay, we just have to, and I think that's what you're alluding to with Sean and them, is talking about,
Always fun.
Formulating some sort of policy or something that, we need to have at least X in here or fund to this. And, you know, I think that, and since this group is relatively new, together 4 or 5 years, and that they were on the brink of going into a deficit, they're looking at that right now, actually, at their next board meeting, is formulating a policy on what they want to keep in reserve, what they want to budget, if they hit X, what they're going to budget. So it's, I know it's not easy. It's very difficult, especially, you know, when you get told you have to cut your budgets or you have to do that. And, you know, it's easy to look at it on the health side, especially if coming in and you're trending towards a bad year, and I'm saying 12%, and you see you have a decent reserve. Sometimes it's the easiest thing to say, well, that's fine. We'll take 500,000 or $1 million out of the reserve to cut down our budget because, you know, we got other areas of concern this year. So I totally get it. And again, it's no different than anybody else. And I think somebody had asked in part of Vin's presentation about, you know, my experience with other groups in your area here and your size and increase, you know, forget fully insured, what they're seeing. It's really hard to compare Cheshire to any other group because everybody's demographic, besides being towns and boards of ed, your demographics are still going to be a little different, and everybody's claims experience is going to be different. So you could have, again, a group that's the same exact size as you, between you and the town, 800 people, 900, you know, 750, 800 people, and they could be averaging $600,000 in claims a month. And so obviously their projection is going to be different than your projection is going to be. So it's kind of hard to say, you know, what the different municipalities around you are going to budget, but you know, it's nothing different than I'm seeing in my other groups, and it's the same conversations. Trust me, it's the same conversation every board of ed in every town is having right now, regardless of what they have in reserve or don't have in reserve. And you know, COVID has not, you know, and I think we have started seeing some of a spike in COVID, and I think you're also starting to see some of the, you know, not just people getting the services. I think you're starting to see some of the COVID costs creep in too, that people did end up in the hospital. People, you know, the additional testing people have been getting, the treatments. I just did again, I can't really compare a municipality, but I just did my commercial, pretty much across the board, my commercial increases for 1/1/2022. I saw in their claims costs that COVID claims costs were anywhere between 10 to 15% of their cost. So, you know, in addition to whatever else was going on, and now we have the mandate that Vin was alluding to, you know, that happened last week that everybody is still sorting out, but it's pretty cut and dry that you're self-funded and the way it's written right now, and we're still trying to figure out how Cigna's going to administer and what they're going to do. But, you know, starting the last Saturday, any one of your employees can submit up to per person in the household 8 tests per month, starting 5th. So last Saturday, if somebody went out, has a family of 4, and got 32 tests, found 32 tests somewhere, CVS, whatever, they can submit a receipt to Cigna and get reimbursed, which is going to run through your claims experience.
If I could just ask one more question, unfortunately, about the retirees again. So if someone were hired in 1987 and they retired, let's say in 2010, right? Does that mean that that's the kind of person where they had not been contributing to Medicare or Medicaid that entire time? Is that what we're talking about? So I'm understanding, because I'm trying to figure out how there's 52 people left.
I'm by no means a Medicare expert, though, but it's based on quarters paid in, and there's something about so you listen. There could be some pre-1987. So what people that fall in this group usually are teachers, police, and firefighters. So there could be some people in this group that retired or worked previously and had a different job. Like a lot of times it happens with the police and firefighters more often, is that if they were pre-1987, they took other jobs or something, and they paid in enough quarters into Medicare or Social Security that they were eligible for Medicare. A lot of times these teachers didn't get second jobs, or didn't, or, or taught their whole career and didn't pay enough quarters into retire. I mean, I know it seems crazy that you could have somebody retired back in 87 or 88 still on your plan or lie. It seems very, it seems crazy, but we still see it in a bunch of groups.
Okay.
But it's all about paying in quarter. And the other thing is, a lot of them are single, because a lot of times if the spouses were eligible, and paid in enough quarters and stuff, that they could be eligible based off the spouse. So a lot of times, a lot of these people are single, that they don't have a spouse or didn't pay enough in. And I mean, I would bet if we look at all 52, they're all single. I guarantee they're all single.
No, the coverage is single.
Yeah, the coverage is single. Yeah.
Tim, you had your hand up.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, thank you for all this tonight, Tom. I appreciate it.
No problem.
So what I heard you saying before was towns are all different. It's difficult to normalize claims across towns. But one thing I thought I heard you say was that generally speaking, we have more large claimants at this moment in time compared to most of the other towns.
No, I should have qualified. I'm against Cheshire's experience. So, I mean, if you look at it, and I just look over the years when I see what's driving Cheshire, but no, I guess compared to other towns, I wouldn't necessarily say there's more or less. And then the other thing is, like I said, or what I should have said is, when you look at some of the, like I said, these diagnoses, like the one that's at the top right now was on last year, is on this year, looking at some of these diagnoses, you can just look at them and say they're going to happen year to year. And yeah, and then there's some that are just, there's a lot, some of these diagnoses also that, the ones that drive the claims even more. There's a lot of these ones that are on the reports that are chronic conditions that will just run in the $100,000 to $125,000 range every year, because they're really managing whatever they have with expensive prescriptions. So, they don't even end up hitting the stop loss. So you get 3 or 4 of those people, 3 or 4 of those members that don't even hit the stop loss. They just run around 125 to 130. That's all picked up totally by the Cheshire Board of Ed. So again, I apologize. I was kind of talking more because I've worked with Cheshire for a while historically of what I think is, when I look at your information, what's driving the past couple of years. Like I said, I did not see, like if I go back, I mean, we can go back to the claim report and look at it, but if I look at April 2020, if I look at March, April, May, June 2020, if I look at any group for municipalities, commercial, any of my groups, if I look at that, I saw a steep decrease, obviously, like we said, because of COVID when it first hit and everything shut down. For whatever reason, we did not really see a dip in the Cheshire Board of Ed claims. And so again, I don't know if that was, again, people had a lot of stuff done prior to the shutdown, and then it fed in March, April, May. Those are things we have to look at. But there was, again, I'll throw out another. We're talking about fully insured. When I look at fully insured groups, you look at what's called loss ratios. So the carriers, for every dollar you paid the carrier, if they paid 50 cents in claims, your loss ratio is 50%. Normally the fully insured groups, just so you understand, to get like a flat increase from the carrier, probably need about a 70% loss ratio. So again, those first 3 or 4 COVID months, I saw groups dropping down to 15, 20, 25% like loss ratios I'd never seen before, because they weren't having any experience. So again, it seems like you've had a combination of COVID, of some large claims, and of just overall utilization from the group who, and again, that can go back to, and listen, I can dig down even more, like I said, besides the predictive modeling, I can dig down even more and look, we go down on our report to I think it's 50% of the stop loss. So, half of 175,000. That's what we put on the report. But I can go all the way down to, I bet if I go all the way down to 10 to 15,000 and pull the report, I bet you got a ton of people in that range where, again, people were getting, not sound like a broken record, hip replacements, knee replacements, surgeries, things like that. I bet if I run, and I can do that for Vin, that's pretty easy. I bet if I run it year over year all the way down to 10,000.
Actually, you know what? I have the data right here. This is July to December.
Yeah.
From
You did
19, 20, and 21. So on the left, in 2019, we had 25 claims of 25,000 or more, totaling 1.43 million. In 2020, that number spiked to 45 claims and 2.8 million. And this July to December that just passed, it stayed up there at 43 claims and almost double. So, and then on the bottom of this chart, you could see COVID is a small number. Heart, arterial, blood, bone and joint, cancer, those are the ones that are 25,000 and up that have really increased significantly. And I'll just...
Well, and before I forget, the other thing I want that's a big factor in your claims year over year, and so you one of the main reasons you hire Cigna or an Anthem or a United or whoever when you're self-funded, yeah, you hire them to pay your claims, but the biggest reason you hire them is for their discounts, right? Because that's what they negotiate. They negotiate with the hospitals, they negotiate with all the doctors. So the other part of trend, or when your claims go up, that we don't talk about a lot, but we should, and people don't realize, is that, and we just saw this, is that, and I don't know if anybody has Cigna or realizes it, but we just went through this because teachers and everybody were asking, is they just had to renegotiate with Waterbury. No, the Waterbury, St. Mary's, Trinity, which owns all, which you're right here in Cheshire, and so they just had to renegotiate with all those Trinity, the hospitals that Trinity owns. I think it's Waterbury and St. Mary. I think it's Waterbury and St. Mary's. Anyways, the ones so my point is that Cigna tries to hold the line. If anybody remembers, or you are a member of Cigna, letters went out. Hey, we're going to drop them. You're not going to, it's a game between Cigna and the carrier. And I think actually they were out of network for technically. I think the contract dropped for a couple. For a couple weeks. My point is
they retroactively didn't have anybody lose any claim dollars.
Yeah, my point is what we don't see in these numbers is that if and that was just one negotiation, but they're always negotiating. Yale will be up soon, and they'll have to negotiate with Yale. But what we don't see in these numbers, if and that's what you pay Cigna for. Cigna can't just say to Trinity, okay, we'll give you a 20% increase, because that knee surgery, just using round numbers, that was $10,000. It goes up 20%. Now it's going to be $12,000. So of course, being self-funded, your claim costs are going to go up. So again, I just didn't want to lose sight of that, because that was a good example, because that just happened. Is that over these years, as the hospitals want more money, the costs do go up too. So sorry.
I mean, but that's built into that inflation.
It is built into
the
inflation. It is built into the inflation, and it is built into the projections. But I'm just saying, over time, what contributes to the cost going up.
Can I keep going, Adam? Just for
yeah, go ahead.
All right, thank you.
Yeah,
just try to. It's getting a little late, so just want to, if there is a quick answer to this. So I'm looking at the chart actually that Vin is looking at right now, and I see 2021, that orange, the bar for heart, arterial, and blood. And what jumps out at my mind is we have a preventive care program in place. Is there anything that would be worth the money to do more? And I don't know if you have an answer off the top of your head, but that's just what I'm.
No, I mean, again, I know it is running late, so I will tell you, it's as far as preventive care, wellness programs, things like that, it is much harder on the collectively bargain side to get stuff in place. And I know a lot of you obviously have health insurance through your employers, and maybe you have wellness programs. And so just a real, for USI, it's they take the stick approach versus the carrot. If my wife and I don't get our physicals, we don't do the recommend. And if we have our physicals and get our blood work done, and we don't get the recommended stuff done, so if I have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and they recommend I need this, or the health coach, I need to do that. If I don't do all of the things that they recommend, I don't do all the steps by certain dates, I pay 30% more for my health insurance. And it goes from any spouse. So to your point, yeah, in that heart and arteria, could there be more that could be done? Absolutely. And, you know, we've been trying to push it, is that the biggest thing you can do for the employees is municipalities have always had rich health plans. And even with the deductible, I would still argue the HSAs, everything you have are still great health plans. They're still awesome. But what's been happening is they do have a lot of your employees do have relationships with doctors and stuff. But unfortunately, I bet you we look at the numbers, still a lot of them are just going once they're diagnosed with something, or they don't feel well or something. Whereas, like, you make a great point, that orange shade there, you get somebody that goes and the doctor says they have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, sends them for more tests, goes and finds out that they have 2 out of 4 arteries clogged, and they get them in, and get angioplasty, and before they have a catastrophic heart attack or something. The cancers are, I think I've shared this in the reports that I run through with Vin. If I see breast cancer, prostate cancer, any of the ones that can be really caught early on reports, it's kind of on 2 sides. It's kind of disturbing. Is one, you catch a breast cancer in stage 1, it's probably, I think the number we usually use is 10 to 15,000, and the survival rate is 99%. You catch breast cancer in stage 3 or 4, the costs go up to $150,000 to $200,000, and the survival rate's like 20%. So what I'm saying is it's costing dollars, but it's also, you don't want to just put these healthcare costs in dollars too. There's lives and people involved too, that it's better, you want better outcomes for your employees too.
Absolutely. Thank you. So that is something that maybe could be negotiated in different contracts over the course of the years, like IAs or next year. Okay.
Absolutely. But I can tell you the Board of Ed, and even on the town side, of all the municipalities I work with, I will definitely say that with the wellness dollars we were able to secure from Cigna, and we rolled some over, and we've used it year to year. We used a little for COVID, for some COVID stuff, but in general, I say the Board of Ed and town have been doing a great job of sitting down with USI, Cigna, coming up with programs that we can put in place in a collectively bargained environment.
All right, thank you. And with just one last question here that I think will be quick. Just my understanding, just from the news, what I've read, is that various healthcare providers can have like widely disparate costs. Some of them are really good at containing costs, and some are not for whatever reason. Is there anything out there that would be worthwhile for the Board of Ed to support, if not financially, at least like, hey, this is another Board of Ed that's saying this group, the direction they're going is worthwhile, and healthcare providers should be listening to them because they're onto something here?
Yeah. So again, it's the quick answer is and we've had meetings that's something that should be done through Cigna. And that's something we've had meetings with. And actually it was back in November, they actually did come in and provide data to us, showing us they've put together these different groups. I forget the major one up in the Hartford area of physicians. I think it's Pro Health. I think it was Pro Health. And they gave us a whole chart of how many of your employees use Pro Health. And basically what they were showing us, to your point, is that Pro Health is taking a lower reimbursement, but if they have better outcomes for the employees, they control the cost better, they can earn a bonus from Cigna.
Okay.
I'm probably not giving it full justice.
Sure, I get the point. It's incentivized.
But I'm saying they're trying to drive. Cigna has put a program together where they are trying to drive Cheshire's employees to more cost-effective physicians. Because again, with high deductible health plans, it's better for them too.
Okay, so I'm not sure if Vin or Jeff were aware of that. You said you met in November, if it was you meeting with Cigna. So just have that on a radar for whenever union discussions come up, pushing people incentivizing it to get people to go in that direction, if it makes sense. And it sounds like it makes sense. That's it. Thank you, Adam.
Faith, go ahead.
Couple of things. Okay, so we are going to be looking at beginning new series of contract negotiations, and I go back to the high deductible, the cost sharing. And I know that when you're talking about 2,000 or two and a half or $4,000, that seems like a lot of money. For example, but I look at, for example, my husband's and my high deductible plan, we're looking at 7,000 and 10,000. So I would strongly encourage, I don't mean to be a real hard ass on this one, but as we negotiate these deductibles, we raise them up to industry standards, if as much as we can, because I do think that even at 2.25 thousand and 4,000, they're getting a really good deal for the cost sharing. Just a suggestion. And to piggyback on what Tim said, my biggest concern is hospital costs. I had an experience 10 years ago where I was in the hospital for 5 days and somehow got the bill, and it was $250,000. So a little transparency and probably pressure by someone like Cigna for hospitals to open their books and start explaining their charges might reduce them. But nevertheless, so Vin, you had talked about the ebb and flow of our claims history, and we get hammered, and then we have a paradise, and then we get hammered again. My concern is that last ebb and flow was 10 years ago, and many of these people are now that much older. So these claims are only gonna go up until the claimant passes, because so many of them are retirees. Is there any, I don't know, I guess my concern is we're looking at a $2.2 million increase. 1.5 of that is to make this town whole. Are we even gonna be able to catch up this year? And again, I know you talked about it on Thursday, and I'm sorry if I missed it, but are we even gonna be close to whole?
So when you say close to whole, are we
going to reverse the trend, or are we still? Yeah, it is like deja vu all over again.
Yeah, I know. That was from, it's like, that was last year's slide. It's deja vu all over again, all over again. So, and I think part of your question, Faith, and I think Tony was alluding to it earlier too, is, if by making this increase to fund the 2.2 million gets us even with our expected claims rate. So by raising the 2.2 million, we'll be able to be contributing at a rate equal to expected claims of $12 million per year. That doesn't build up the reserve unless claims do drop off, which there's risk in them dropping off or increasing, right? We all know that, we've experienced that. So I can't say what's going to happen. What we can do, and this is what's controllable. We know what the 12-month projection is based on the 12-month rolling and then adjusted. I think the $1 million per month for claims is what we need. It's a little bit higher than Tom's number right now, but I think Tom's number is going to go up after 1 month from last year drops off and a new month drops in.
Yeah.
But that's an important point, because we are not doing anything to replenish the reserve. All we would do with this budget increase is make contributions equal to expected claims.
But then again, to Vince's point, if you do start budgeting more towards expected, obviously everybody, this is a big deal because these aren't small numbers. This is a lot of money we're talking about. So again, if you start budgeting towards $1 million a month, and you get 3 months in a row of $700,000, it can, just like can eat away pretty quickly. If you start running, it can also build up pretty quickly too.
And I mean, that's been our past history, that when you fund contributions to the expected claims after you've been running on reserves for a few years, we have seen that where it builds up for a few years. But it's And everybody understands that part of this year's increase is because we underfunded last year on the budget. So we're making up 2 years. We have to move from 816,000 budgeted per month to $1 million. That's why this is painful this year.
Okay. Okay, I think that's all I have. Thank you.
There's one more small section and we'll be done with benefits if you want to hit pension. Or do you want to stop? I'm good to go, but it's up to you, Mr. Grippo.
I saw those slides. It didn't seem that bad, so let's go. Let's keep going.
All right. So pension, there's really not a lot of change over last year. So just to be clear, we have to fund pension and retirement accounts for our non-certified employees. Our teachers and administrators, they fund their own retirement plan. We offer 2 different retirement plans that we have to fund. The Town of Cheshire pension plan, which we shut off to new employees in 2012. So we still have 80 employees that were contributing, and of the budget request of 1.36 million, we are budgeting 995,000 for those employees. And the defined contribution plan, which has been the only plan available to non-certified employees starting in 2012, that population is growing. So of the 1.3 million, you could see the split in that first bullet: 995,000 for the pension, 370,000 to fund the defined contribution plan. So one's shrinking, one's growing. The information related to, how the plans work, basically we have to match up to 6% for our non-certified staff, except secretaries. Through the collective bargaining contract in 2018, we contribute up to 8% for those employees. What's happened, though, is our pension plan contributions have increased steadily since 2007-8 due to one, in 2009, which is all the way to the left of this chart. We've been doing this chart so long. 2009's financial crisis is kind of blurry in everybody's memory, I'm sure, but that was a bit of a watershed event. When that happened, all the actuaries started to look at it and say, hey, these 10% expected rates of return that pension plans were getting, it's not going to be 10% anymore. So one event was the decline in the markets in 2009, which have clearly rebounded. But this last bullet that's on this slide is really where we have to increase our costs and our funding. So we reduced the return assumptions from 8.25% down to 7% at the recommendation of our actuaries, resulting in the need to increase contributions. So you could see this chart on the left in that second column. In 2006, we were contributing 84,000 to the pension in this budget line. And then it went up to, a couple of 100,000 by the time we got to 2011. And then in 2012, 13, 14, those started to dramatically increase our budget contributions. That's because we lowered the rate of return assumptions. So this year's budget is a 9.3% increase. It's 90,000. The only caveat here is that this is an estimate. We're still waiting for the final numbers from the actuaries. And then this kind of wraps up employee benefits. So as we saw, certified salaries as a percentage of budget has decreased since 2003. Employee benefits, you could see just looking at it, has been increasing. And if we fund, the full 2.2 million, the employee benefits will account for about 18.5% of our total budget. So that's it on pension and employee benefits. So I'll pause to see if there's any questions on this. Okay.
I see no questions.
Okay, then really all that's left is to show that we did complete workshop 1. It's 10:05 actually. We got through a lot of information. I apologize this was so long. And I realize I'm not on camera, but I apologize this was so long, but we really tried to include as much information as possible on the benefits side. And we thank Tom for being here. So that concludes tonight's. We come back next Thursday night for the rest of the administrative review of accounts. And
I'm
That's
happy
it.
to, if anybody has questions and wants to reach out, then he knows where to find me. I'm happy to answer any other questions, and if there are any other meetings down the road that you even want me to attend for a little bit of a part of, if there's anything you want me to attend part of the meeting to answer any questions, I'm happy to.
Thank you. All right, if there's no other questions or no further information, I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
I second.
All right, so it sounded like Sam's, well, there was a second. Fantastic. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. See you all Thursday.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.